It was a cold winter evening. The little cafe at the corner of the street was full of people. The sound of soft music and the sweet smell of freshly baked cupcakes filled the air. Everyone looked happy. Some people were laughing, others were busy talking and sipping hot coffee. But in one quiet corner sat a woman and her young son. The boy was around 8 years old. His small hands were holding a tiny paper cup of water, and his eyes, big, brown, and curious, were fixed on the glass counter near the cashier. Behind that glass, dozens of colorful cupcakes were lined up like little treasures. Chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, each one looked soft and sweet. With cream shining under the warm cafe lights, the boy kept staring at them. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just looked. His mother noticed and smiled sadly. She whispered softly, "Don't look too long, my love." The boy nodded, but his eyes stayed on the cupcakes. They looked tired. Their clothes were old, but clean. The mother's hands were rough, showing she worked hard every day. She carried a small bag, maybe her only one. Her son's shoes were torn on one side, and his coat looked a little too big for him, if it was once someone else's. The waiter saw them when they walked in. He didn't greet them with a smile like he did for others. Instead, he looked them up and down and sighed quietly. He thought to himself, "They won't order much. Maybe just one cheap tea?" He turned away, pretending to wipe a table. The woman raised her hand gently. "Excuse me," she said in a soft voice. The waiter walked over, a fake smile on his face. "Yes, ma'am." She looked at the menu for a long time, then said, "1 cup of tea, please. That's all?" he asked, a little surprised. "Yes, that's all," she said. Carefully counting a few coins in her hand, the waiter nodded and walked away, shaking his head. He whispered to another staff member, "See? I told you. Just a cup of tea." They both laughed quietly. While they were talking, the boy kept looking at the cupcakes. He leaned forward, pressing his hands on the table. His eyes sparkled, full of silent excitement, the kind only children have. When they see something they really want. The waiter returned with a small cup of tea and placed it on the table. The woman thanked him with a kind smile, but he didn't reply. He just walked away. For a few minutes, nothing happened. The cafe buzzed with life. The sound of spoons, laughter, music. But at that small table, everything felt still. The mother slowly sipped her tea, trying to make it last. The boy sat quietly, still staring at the cupcakes, his little face full of quiet hope. Every now and then, he would glance at the waiter, then back at the cupcakes, as if asking silently, "Can I just look a little longer?" But the waiter didn't care. He pretended not to notice. He kept serving others, smiling and chatting with them, ignoring the pair completely. Outside, the wind grew stronger. People came in, shaking off the cold, laughing loudly. But at that small corner table, the warmth felt far away. Then something small but powerful happened. A woman sitting near the window noticed the boy. She had been quietly reading a book, but now her eyes followed his gaze. She saw what he was looking at, the cupcakes. She saw how his mother tried to hide her sadness. The woman closed her book slowly and watched. The boy smiled faintly at one cupcake, a chocolate one with white cream on top. It was the kind of smile that could melt anyone's heart. The waiter walked past again, pretending not to see. But this time, the woman at the window did not look away. She watched the boy with a soft expression. Something was changing in her eyes. No one else in the cafe noticed. The music played on, the laughter continued, the smell of cupcakes filled the air. But something quiet was about to happen. Something that would change the mood of that little cafe forever. And the boy. He had no idea that someone else had been watching him all along. The cafe grew a little noisier as people came in. The warm lights reflected softly on the glass counter, making the cupcakes glow like tiny treasures. The boy still sat quietly in the corner, his small chin resting on the table, eyes fixed on the cupcakes. He didn't blink much. It was as if the whole world around him didn't exist anymore, only those cupcakes did. His mother gently touched his shoulder. "Drink some water," she whispered. He nodded, took a sip, and smiled a little. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't complain. He just watched. The waiter walked past them again, carrying a tray full of steaming coffee mugs. He glanced at the boy, then looked away quickly. Inside, he thought, why do they sit here for so long? People like them should go somewhere cheaper. He placed the tray on a nearby table and whispered to another waiter. They've been here for 20 minutes and ordered only one tea. The other waiter laughed. Maybe they're here for the free warmth, he said. Both laughed quietly, not knowing someone else had heard them. The same woman near the window, who had noticed the boy earlier, the woman frowned. She looked at the mother, who was now slowly finishing her tea. The boy sat straight again, still watching the cupcakes. The woman could see his reflection in the glass counter, his eyes full of wonder and something else too. Something like quiet hunger? Meanwhile, the waiter kept moving around, pretending to be busy. He walked near the counter and spoke to the baker behind it. Don't bother about that table, he said in a low voice. They can't afford anything sweet, the baker didn't answer. Just looked at the waiter and shook his head slightly. The boy's mother finally spoke, her voice calm but tired. Excuse me, she said softly. The waiter sighed before turning. Yes, ma'am. Can you please tell me how much is that small cupcake? She asked, pointing at the chocolate one her son had been watching. The waiter looked at her hand, then at the glass counter. That one? It's $2.50. The woman smiled sadly. Okay, thank you. She looked down at her wallet again, counting the few coins left. She had just enough for their bus ride home. Her heart ached, but she smiled anyway. The boy looked at her hopefully. Mom, he whispered. She placed her hand over his. Next time, my love, she said softly. I promise. The boy nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. His eyes, however, couldn't stop going back to that cupcake, the one with white cream and a small chocolate heart on top. The waiter turned around again, rolling his eyes. He muttered under his breath, promises cost nothing. Then he laughed quietly to himself. At another table, the woman by the window closed her book completely now. She wasn't reading anymore. She was watching, not with pity, but with quiet thought. She had seen that same look once before, when she was a child, staring through a bakery window. The waiter noticed her watching and gave a polite smile, the kind used only for paying customers. But she didn't smile back. She simply said, Excuse me. He walked toward her quickly. Yes, ma'am. She pointed toward the glass counter. Can you pack one of those chocolate cupcakes, please? Of course, he said, his tone suddenly cheerful. For here or to go? She smiled lightly. To go! And please, when you give it to that little boy in the corner. The waiter froze. Sorry? You heard me, she said quietly. Give it to him, tell him. It's from the cafe. A special offer today. The waiter looked confused. But ma'am, don't argue, she interrupted gently. Just do it. The waiter hesitated. Something in her calm eyes made him stop talking. He slowly nodded and walked toward the counter. He took out a box and placed one chocolate cupcake inside, carefully closing the lid. He could feel a strange weight in his chest, guilt maybe, or something close to it. As he carried the box toward the boys' table, his steps slowed down. The cafe noise faded behind him. The boy looked up as the waiter stopped beside them. For you, the waiter said quietly. Special offer today. The boy blinked, confused. For me. The waiter nodded. Yes, for you. The mother looked shocked. But we didn't, it's already paid, he said quickly. Avoiding her eyes, the boy slowly reached out and opened the box. Inside sat the cupcake he had been dreaming of, soft, chocolatey, and shining under the light. His small face lit up, eyes wide with pure joy, and from across the cafe, the woman by the window smiled, a small, secret smile that no one noticed. The boy's small fingers trembled as he held the cupcake box. For a few seconds, he just stared at it, afraid it might disappear. The cafe lights shimmered on the clear lid, making the chocolate frosting shine like gold. His mother looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. Go on, she whispered. Open it. He lifted the lid slowly, like someone opening a treasure chest. The sweet smell filled the air between them. He looked up at the waiter again. "Is it really free?" he asked softly. The waiter cleared his throat. "Yes. A special offer," he repeated, his voice low. The mother's lips trembled. She pressed her hand over her heart and smiled. "Thank you," she said gently. The waiter nodded quickly and turned away before she could see the strange guilt rising on his face. He didn't look back. He walked straight to the counter and began wiping it again, pretending to be busy. But his hands shook slightly at the window. The woman who had sent the cupcake watched the moment quietly. She saw the boy take a small bite, his eyes closing as if he had just tasted happiness for the first time. She smiled, but her smile carried a shadow, a memory from years long gone. Outside, snow began to fall softly. People rushed by with scarves and shopping bags, unaware that inside this small cafe, something beautiful had just happened. The boy broke the cupcake in 2 pieces. "Mom, you like this?" he said, pushing half toward her. She shook her head. "No, you eat it." He frowned. "But you like chocolate." She hesitated, then took the smaller piece. They both laughed, a quiet, pure sound that seemed to warm even the cold air around them. The waiter, still pretending not to watch, felt a tightness in his chest. He had seen hundreds of customers, but none had made him feel like this. The laughter was small, but full of something he hadn't heard in a long time. Gratitude. The woman at the window turned back to her book. But her eyes didn't move across the page. She wasn't reading anymore. She was remembering. Years ago, she had been that little girl sitting with her father in a bakery window. She could still recall the hunger, the quiet hope, the embarrassment when her father counted his last coins. And she remembered the stranger who had bought her a slice of cake and said, "Never forget how it feels to be seen." That small act had followed her all her life. And now in this cafe, fate had given her a chance to return the kindness. The waiter finally walked to the back of the cafe, pretending to fetch napkins. He leaned against the wall and sighed. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed of his attitude. He remembered how his own mother used to save every coin so he could go to school. "What have I become?" he whispered to himself. Meanwhile, the boy had finished his cupcake. His mother wiped the crumbs from his cheek, smiling tenderly. "Did you like it?" she asked. He nodded fast. "It's the best thing I ever ate." They both laughed again. The waiter watched them from a distance. This time not with judgment, but with quiet respect. When the woman at the window stood up to leave, she caught his eye. For a second, their gazes met. She gave a small nod, a look that said, "You did the right thing, even if you didn't mean to." He wanted to say thank you, but she turned and walked toward the door before he could speak. The bell above the door chimed softly as she stepped out into the snow. The boy turned to watch her go, not knowing who she was or what she had done. He simply waved, and she smiled back through the window. The cafe felt warmer now. The laughter of strangers didn't seem so distant anymore. The waiter took a deep breath and whispered, almost to himself, "Maybe kindness is contagious." He didn't know it yet. But that single cupcake, that small act from a stranger, had already begun to change him. And outside, as the snow covered the streets, the woman disappeared into the crowd, carrying with her the quiet joy of knowing she had kept a promise made long ago. The snow outside had grown thicker now. The cafe windows looked foggy from the warm air inside meeting the cold night breeze. People came and went, stamping their feet and brushing snow off their coats. But at one corner table, time felt slower, softer somehow. The little boy was still smiling, crumbs of chocolate on his lips. His mother gently wiped them off with a napkin, her eyes full of love. The empty cupcake box sat between them, now just a small reminder of the moment that had filled their hearts. The waiter watched from behind the counter. His hands were still, his mind somewhere far away. He couldn't stop thinking about that small boy's smile. It wasn't just happiness, it was gratitude. The kind that speaks without words. The woman who had paid for the cupcake was gone now, but her presence seemed to linger in the air. The waiter looked toward the chair where she had sat. The open book still rested on the table, a sign she might return. But when he went closer, he saw she had left it behind on purpose. He picked it up. Inside the book, on the very first page, a folded paper was tucked in. He hesitated before opening it. The handwriting was neat and soft, almost like a whisper. It said, "Kindness doesn't need a name. It only needs a heart." The waiter stood there for a moment, reading those words again and again. He felt something stirred deep inside him, a feeling he hadn't known in years. At the same time, another customer sitting near the counter had noticed what had happened. A middle-aged man, with a tired face, wearing a simple coat, spoke softly to his daughter. "See that boy?" he said. "Someone just made his day. That's what real goodness looks like." The little girl nodded, her eyes wide. "Can we do that too, Dad?" He smiled. "Yes, someday. Even today." The cat, without anyone realizing it, had started to change. The energy, once busy and careless, now felt warm, gentle, almost like the smell of the cupcakes themselves. The mother finished her tea and looked around. "We should go," she said quietly. "It's getting late." The boy nodded but kept glancing at the counter, as if hoping to thank whoever gave him the cupcake. As they stood up, the waiter quickly walked toward them. His voice was softer now, almost shy. "Ma'am," he said, "thank you for visiting. Please, come again." The woman smiled. "We will," she said kindly. "You have a lovely place." Her voice was genuine, and it surprised him. He had expected embarrassment or silence, not kindness in return, as they left. The boy turned back one last time and waved at the waiter. The waiter lifted his hand awkwardly and waved back. It felt strange and right. Outside, the snowflakes fell quietly on their heads. The streetlights made the ground sparkle like diamonds. The boy looked up at his mother and said, "Mom, I want to work in a cafe when I grow up." She laughed softly. "Why, my love?" "So I can give cupcakes to kids like me," he said proudly. Her laughter turned into a tearful smile. She hugged him tight, her heart full. Inside, the waiter still stood near the door, watching them disappear into the snowy street. Something had changed inside him. Something small but powerful. He walked back to the counter and took out a notebook from under the register. It was old, used for orders and bills. On the last page, he wrote a new note for himself. "Be kind first, always." Then he folded the paper and kept it inside his pocket. Right next to the small note from the stranger's book, the cafe was closing soon, but he didn't feel tired anymore. For the first time in a long while, he felt proud of where he worked. That night, as he locked the door and turned off the lights, he looked once more at the empty chair by the window. The book was gone now, but its words stayed with him, and somewhere far away, the woman who had left the note smiled quietly. Knowing that her simple act had done exactly what she'd hoped for, it had started a chain of kindness, one cupcake at a time. The night passed slowly. Snow covered the streets, painting everything white and quiet. The cafe lights went off one by one, until only the soft glow from the sign outside remained. Inside, the waiter stayed for a while, cleaning tables and thinking. He couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind, the boy's bright smile, the mother's soft voice, the stranger's calm eyes. Something about that woman felt familiar, like he had seen her before. But where? He walked to the back room, hung his apron on the hook, and took out the note again, the one he had found inside the stranger's book. He read it slowly under the dim light. Kindness doesn't need a name. It only needs a heart. He touched the words with his fingers as if they could explain something he didn't yet understand. The handwriting seemed gentle, patient, like someone who had lived through pain and still chose to be kind. The next morning, the cafe opened again. The air was filled with the smell of fresh bread and roasted coffee beans. People rushed in from the cold, rubbing their hands and ordering breakfast. Everything looked normal, yet inside the waiter had changed. He smiled for that morning. He even helped an old man carry his tray. The baker noticed and raised an eyebrow. "You're in a good mood," he said with a grin. The waiter shrugged. "Maybe I just learned something yesterday." Later, as he arranged the tables, he noticed something under the window seat. A small piece of paper folded neatly. It must have fallen from the stranger's book. He picked it up, curious. When he opened it, he saw another note written in the same handwriting. "To whoever finds this, I once sat in a cafe like this with my mother. I was hungry and she had no money. A stranger bought me a cake. That day changed how I saw the world. It taught me that goodness can appear quietly without asking for anything. If you're reading this, please pass it on. Help someone else, even if no one is watching. The waiter's eyes softened. He sat down on the nearest chair and read the note again, slower this time. The words felt alive, like they carried the warmth of the person who wrote them. So that was it. The stranger wasn't just being kind, she was continuing a kindness once shown to her. A kindness that had survived time. He placed the note carefully in his apron pocket. He didn't tell anyone about it, but something in his heart whispered that he would do the same one day. Later that afternoon, the cafe door opened again. A delivery boy came in, his cheeks red from the cold. "Package for the cafe owner," he said, handing a small brown envelope. The waiter signed and opened it. Inside was another note, and this time it was addressed to him. His name was written on the front, in the same soft handwriting. His hand shook as he unfolded. "Thank you for delivering the cupcake yesterday. I saw the change in your eyes. Don't lose that. The world needs more people who notice small things." It wasn't signed, but he didn't need a name. He knew exactly who it was. He folded the letter slowly, a smile forming on his lips. He didn't know how she had found out his name, but maybe kindness had its own mysterious way of finding people. That evening, a little girl came into the cafe with her father. They looked tired, just like the boy and his mother had been. The waiter walked over, remembering the note in his pocket. "Would you like to try our special cupcake today?" he asked gently. The girl looked at her father in surprise. "But we didn't order that," she said. The waiter smiled. "It's on the house. A gift." The man hesitated, then smiled too. "Thank you," he said softly. The girl tasted the cup. Her face lit up the same pure joy he had seen the night before. Behind the counter, the waiter looked out the window, wondering where the kind stranger was now. Maybe somewhere far away, maybe in another cafe, still spreading quiet goodness. He whispered under his breath, "I'll pass it on. Just like you said." Outside, snowflakes danced in the air, each one unique, each one gentle, just like kindness itself. The next morning, sunlight poured gently through the cafe windows. The snow had stopped, and the streets outside sparkled under a soft golden glow. Inside, the cafe felt different. It wasn't just a place for coffee and sweets anymore. It had become a place filled with quiet warmth, like a secret shared between hearts. The waiter arrived early. He cleaned every table carefully, humming a soft tune. He didn't know why, but he felt lighter these days. The small note from the stranger still stayed safely inside his apron pocket. Every time he touched it, he felt reminded of what really mattered. The baker came in with a tray of fresh cupcakes. "You're early again," he said with a smile. The waiter laughed. "I guess I just like mornings now." The baker raised an eyebrow. "That's new," he teased. "People can change," the waiter said quietly, wiping the counter. Later that afternoon, the cafe was busy again. The waiter moved through the crowd easily, his steps calmer, his voice softer. He noticed people more now, their tired faces, their small smiles, their eyes searching for comfort. At one corner, an old man sat alone. He looked pale, his hands shaking slightly as he held his coffee. The waiter noticed he hadn't ordered anything to eat. For a moment, he remembered the boy and his mother. Without thinking twice, he walked to the counter and picked up a cupcake. He placed it gently on the man's table. The old man looked up, surprised. "I didn't order this," the waiter smiled. "It's a gift." From the cafe, the man frowned. "Why?" The waiter shrugged. "Because someone once taught me, kindness is better when it travels." The man stared at him for a moment, then smiled weakly. "Then I'll remember that," he said softly. The waiter nodded and walked away. But as he turned, he noticed a young woman watching him from near the window. Her eyes soft, full of quiet recognition. He froze for a moment. Could it be her? The same woman who had bought the cupcake for the boy? The woman smiled, as if she had heard his thoughts. She stood up, walked toward the counter, and ordered a cup of tea. Her voice was calm and gentle, just like before. As he handed her the cup, he said quietly, "You came back." She looked at him and smiled. I wanted to see if the note worked. He laughed lightly. It did, he said. More than you think. She nodded, her eyes glowing with pride. Then promise me something, she said softly. Anything, he replied. Don't stop passing it on, she whispered. Even when no one is watching. He nodded firmly. I promise. The woman finished her tea and stood to leave. Before walking out, she turned to him once more. You know, she said, the smallest kindness often grows the biggest roots. Then she walked away. Disappearing into the crowd outside, just like before, the waiter stood there for a while, staring at the door, his heart warm. Then he turned to the baker and said, From today, let's keep one cupcake every morning, free for whoever needs it most. The baker smiled. A kindness cupcake, huh? The waiter nodded. Yes. 1 cupcake a day. That's all it takes. Days passed, then weeks. People began to notice. Some laughed, some smiled, some even left small thank you notes. The story of the cafe spread quietly, not through ads, but through hearts. One afternoon, the little boy and his mother returned. The boy had grown a little taller, his shoes newer. When he saw the waiter, his face lit up. Hey, you're still here, he said cheerfully. The waiter smiled. Of course. And look what we have, our special cup of the day. The boy laughed. Can I take it for someone else this time? The waiter paused, surprised. For someone else? Yes, the boy said proudly. For the girl outside? She looks hungry. The waiter nodded slowly, smiling. He handed the cupcake over. The boy ran outside, holding it carefully with both hands. The waiter watched from the window as the boy gave it to the little girl. She smiled, and he could almost hear her laughter through the glass. He whispered under his breath, That's how it begins again. Outside, the snow started falling once more, light and peaceful. Inside, the cafe glowed with quiet joy, and somewhere far away, the kind stranger walked down another street, her scarf fluttering in the wind, smiling to herself. She didn't need to look back. She already knew. Her small act of kindness had become a never-ending story.